Hi, and welcome back to the SquareXO podcast. We are on episode 98 now, which is very exciting. So don't forget to follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of the places. Follow, like us, subscribe. Make sure you don't ever miss out on one of our episodes. We are now back to doing them weekly, so you don't have to miss one ever again. Very exciting. So jumping kind of straight into the news. There's a few little bits and bobs. I've been in a bit of a work hole this week, so I haven't seen too much. But the few bits that I have seen, the first one is that Bernie Sanders has a Twitch account, which is odd.
Yes, clearly not in any way an effort to be down with the kids.
No, they said they're going to stream like his
Yeah,
speeches and that kind of stuff. But it's a little odd. It's weird,
yeah.
but why not?
I mean, it's free for them, I suppose. It's not a lot
Exactly,
of
yeah,
effort. Might as
exactly
well.
free.
They might get a few more watchers. You never know.
Maybe some of
They
the
may
kind
be
of
top of the Twitch charts
team.
soon. Who knows?
I'm not gonna hold my. Although saying that, people that maybe would be interested, in watching. I'm not super like into my kind of American politics, but if you are, maybe you would
Yep.
enjoy watching that.
Great for
Um,
Twitch as well because they'll be getting
yeah,
lots of free
yeah.
mainstream publicity out of it. Yeah.
Well, apparently they're also going to do YouTube and Facebook Lives, so that was kind of just what they said they were going to do. But it's apparently the Twitch account has been created. It's very exciting for
There
some
you
people, I'm sure, not necessarily for me, but there you go.
go.
This isn't news probably for anyone, but the Steam Summer Sale is on, so it's very kind of exciting for everyone other than my bank account because the amount
Yes.
of games that I have on Steam that I haven't even probably installed yet is ridiculous. My to playlist is getting kind of out of control at this point.
Yeah, I've kind of banned myself from it because having just signed up to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, I've got more than enough games at my fingertips that I'm not playing
Yeah.
without buying more that I'm not playing. So yeah, I think I'm gonna try and avoid this one as much as possible.
I haven't even like loaded up Steam in a while because purely for the fact of I don't really play too much on my PC at the moment and but I will still buy stuff. I will still go on and be like, oh, I'll just, that's only £2 or whatever. I'll just put it in my basket and I'll buy it, and then it's there for when I do want to play it. And then 3 years later, I've never even installed it. I'm bad for that on PS4 as well, though. I am very guilty for that. But hey ho. News I am quite excited about this is that we're getting a live action Final Fantasy TV show by the people that are currently working on Netflix's Witcher series.
Yes.
So that's exciting to me. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it, and which story we go for, and all of that. But I'm here for that. I mean, I don't know you. I said what you weren't the biggest Final Fantasy fan, I think previously.
Yeah, no,
Not that I'm holding that against you.
I will no doubt watch it. Yeah, no, I've played the odd bit of Final Fantasy, so I'm interested to see what they do with it. I mean, obviously, adaptations of video games, not always fantastic. Um, I did very much enjoy Castlevania. The Netflix series was very good. So they can do good things with it. So yeah, I look forward to see what they do with it.
Good. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic as always.
Yeah. Although I do think
Um,
maybe they should concentrate on finishing Witcher before they start
yes.
jumping out.
I'm quite excited about watching The Witcher when that comes out because Witcher's 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. So
Yeah.
I hope they do Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer, the wonderful Yennefer,
Mm.
my
It'll be
favorite.
interesting because, of course, it's not an adaptation of the game; it's an adaptation of the book. So
Yeah,
it will be interesting to see what difference that makes to
as long
it.
as Yennefer's in it, I'm fine.
I'm
She's
sure she
not.
will be.
Be a little bit upset. I have
But
actually got
she's
the books The Witcher is based on, and I'm yet to read them, which is considering I'm a gamer and a massive book nerd, is very upsetting for me. Um,
yeah.
I really should. I'm looking at
But
them now.
Yennefer has been cast, I believe, a while
She
ago.
has.
So
Very excited.
she's definitely in it.
Good. Talking on Twitch, they just announced they're going to trial subscriber only streams through Twitch, which I have two minds about that. I think a little bit because I follow a lot of Twitch streamers and I subscribe to a few, but the amount of streamers that I enjoy, I can't really afford to sub to all of them. It would put me kind of handsomely out of pocket, I believe, if I were to do that. So I
Yeah.
Yeah.
Monetization of things that are previously free is never a good thing.
Hmm.
But a lot of certainly the big Twitch streamers have Patreons and things anyway, so they already have content that is hidden behind a paywall of some sort. Um, if I suppose if you only watched one streamer and you consumed absolutely all of their content and um, you didn't have the money to pay for it, then I suppose it would be a disappointment. But if you watch a number of streamers, I would think there's enough. There's going to be enough free content out there that's still going to be available. I suppose it depends what they put behind the premium banner, and
Yeah.
if they do continue to put out free stuff as well, and kind of what quality that free stuff is.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, obviously, I hope it's the Twitch streamer themselves. They're the ones that kind of get to have the final word on it. So hopefully, it's not just a
Mm.
case of Twitch goes, okay, these streams will be, and I can't imagine they do that. So fingers crossed. The next bit of news was that the EA execs are not having bonuses this year, or this kind of financial year, because of kind of in light of the recent releases and that kind of stuff, that they kind of want to, not take away. Although my opinion on this is they probably earn a lot of money anyway,
Yeah,
compared
I
to
mean,
your
that's what
developers and stuff.
bonuses are meant to be for. Is if you don't perform, then you don't get your bonus. That's the
Yeah.
way it works. On the other hand, it depends how you're measuring performing. I mean, EA is still making a huge amount of money. I think they were over $1 billion profit last year.
Oh,
So at the end of the day, this is a business. Um, the bottom line, unfortunately, as much as we wouldn't like it to be, the bottom line is the money. Um, so it's interesting to know what the kind of internal targets and things were and how this has come about. It does feel a bit to me like it's a publicity stunt, maybe.
yeah, I did think that
It's
when I saw
Yeah,
it.
it's kind of a goodwill gesture because actually, if EA is making $1 billion profit, sorry, then I would say that's a pretty successful year, regardless of what we may think of their content that's coming out.
I'm sure with the new FIFA coming out, they'll probably make a
Yeah,
ridiculous amount of money again and be absolutely fine. And if the
yeah.
new Star Wars is any good, which hopefully. And then finally, the bit of news that one of the guys, kind of the guys that writes for SquareXO has mentioned that I'd completely forgotten that I read about was the kind of crunch issue with Treyarch recently. It's come out that their quality assurance kind of staff are kind of on the kind of the bad end of crunch kind of industry and crunch culture, as it were. Which I think there's a lot of that in the media at the minute, where kind of developers and people are coming out and saying like, look, we're being made to work these ridiculous hour weeks, and not getting paid extra and not getting paid kind of our dues, because this game has to be out, or this DLC, or something, and yet the minute Treyarch are the kind of, unfortunately, which is sad for me, I love Treyarch, and it kind of makes me sad that to think that they're kind of doing that to their staff, getting paid very little above minimum wage as well, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's again, it's a we all, most of us in our jobs have those times when you have the equivalent of the crunch. I mean, I have it in my day job. There are weeks
Hmm.
when I'm working all hours and I'm working weekends and stuff, and that's kind of it. I think there are things that go alongside that, like in things like time in lieu once the thing's done, and bonuses for doing that, overtime pay, that sort of thing. Um, it, I think there's a lot of discussion about unionizing games developers at the moment in the US certainly, and I think that's probably a very good idea so that you know when you're coming up to a deadline, you're always going to have those extra hours and things. That's just kind of the
Mm,
nature of everything. And you know, as I've just said, being a business, you can't necessarily delay these things forever for everyone to work the 9 to 5.
yeah.
So, but at the same time, we have. So, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's so much of an issue in this country because we have somewhat stronger employment laws. But certainly, maybe in the US, they need to look at unionizing and they need to look at kind of fighting for those same sorts of things over there. so that at least if they do have to work those extra hours, they get the benefit afterwards.
Yeah, and it's not kind of a case of you have to. I know for me, in my day job, there's a lot of times where you kind of have to work the extra, and almost working it isn't like not an option. You can't go, I'm not going to do that because it's well, why not? And it's an issue. I think that's a big thing is they're kind of having the option to say no is a big thing I think for them.
Yeah,
But hopefully they get sorted because everyone goes above and beyond in their job. I think most people do. But I think if it's affecting you detrimentally, there needs to be a something in place. I think to stop the higher ups taking advantage. I think is the big
yeah,
thing. But
and I think there will be. I mean,
yeah,
it's getting more and more publicity. I mean,
yeah,
you probably couldn't remember all of the companies that this has come out about in the last 2 years or so. So
yeah,
yeah, I think the kind of the weight of public opinion and the power of the industry, certainly the guys on the ground, will make a change
yeah.
in the
I
near future.
mean, I think most recently Nintendo with Animal Crossing came out and said, "Look, it's going to be late, but it's going to be late because we don't want to force people." Now, whether or not that's the truth, whether or not they are saying that to be good guy Nintendo, that's speculation. It's entirely up to you. But if that's true, it's a step in the right direction. It's good.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and it's only a couple more months to wait for Animal Crossing, and it'll be great when it's here. So,
Sure. And
um,
it's not like you don't have anything to play before then.
I mean, yeah, don't even like get me started. I was talking to someone today about they're like, "Oh, these retro games that I've got, you should borrow," and I was like, "No, no, like yes, but no. I don't have. Don't even start me on that. My current gen pile is bad enough as it is." Without getting into retro. But speaking of games, well, kind of speaking of games we played. So the topic this week is I was having a little think about games based on other media. So I played this week. I reviewed The Sinking City, which is a kind of detective-y horror-esque game based around the H.P. Lovecraft's like Call of Cthulhu, those kind of that kind of world. Um, and it got me kind of thinking about other games that were based on other forms of media, whether it be movies or comic books, anime, that kind of thing. And for me, it's always kind of been a bit of a they're either amazing or they're god awful. I mean, to be fair, let's say Call of Cthulhu, then that's a different game. Sinking City was pretty good. It wasn't blow my mind amazing. It was, if you want to read my review, it was on the site. It was good, but it wasn't breathtaking. But a couple that kind of stand out to me, for example. So I don't know if you watch anime at all. There's one called Sword Art Online, which I am a particular fan of. But the Sword Art Online games, I personally I hate them. I remember picking one of them up and being so excited to play it and take it home. And I think I played it maybe an hour, and that was an hour of me going, I hate everything about this. The controls felt awkward, and the voice acting was weird, and it just. And sorry if anyone out there loves them, but I just not could not get into them. Then on the flip side of that, you look at something like Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man for PS4, which is this just it's phenomenal. Like Spider-Man PS4 was just absolutely ridiculous. I loved that game. So I don't know if there's anything that you kind of have feelings about, anything that you've played that's come from a different media source that you kind of have any strong feelings about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that kind of adaptations of other media have changed somewhat in the last 5 years, maybe longer. You used to get very much direct adaptations of other things. So the infamous Avatar game, the way you could get
Ugh.
the platinum in
Like
10 minutes or
super
something.
easy, yeah.
Yeah, and Peter Jackson's King Kong the movie, the game.
Mhm.
Um, those classics. But it seems now, certainly the more successful ones, you kind of get a new treatment of the source material. So, like Spider-Man, it's not a direct adaptation of
Mm.
a comic story or of one of the films or anything else. It's kind of a new story within that world. And the same with that's what Avengers is going for. The
Yes.
Arkham games, the Batman Arkham games did the same.
Oh, see, I
Telltale
didn't like the
Games,
Batman games.
did you not? Oh
No,
well,
I'm sorry.
I understand they were very popular. Telltale, of course, were
Telltale. Oh, such a shame. Such a
RIP,
shame.
but they were kind of the masters of this for a while. Was
Yeah.
kind of telling new stories using those
Mm.
same characters and those worlds.
I
So yeah, it's interesting that that's kind of the way it's changed.
No, with Telltale, I actually picked up the Wolf Among Us was one of my was my favorite Telltale game. I actually have picked up the Fables, kind of the graphic novels,
Yeah,
since playing that because I was like, I mean, obviously you kind of know the stories anyway, but it's that really interesting, darker kind of twist on these kind of these fables that you've kind of read and are all
yeah,
sweet and lovely, and actually they're horrendous and terrifying and gory. Um, but yeah, I think Avengers is the next big one that's kind of that movie kind of comic book. I mean, it's not from
yeah.
the movie, but obviously it's at the minute. I think Avengers is most known as the kind of movies that have just come out because not everyone reads the comics,
Sure.
which you should do if you haven't because they are very well. It depends on which kind of arc you go for. But that's a podcast for another day. I feel like. Trying to think if there are any other ones, but as you mentioned, stuff like kind of Avatar and King Kong, they're just you play them and you go, what is this? Why? But
Yeah,
then I
it's
suppose
I mean it's interesting that obviously films are kind of the most obvious thing to adapt to video games. Um, the one thing you never get adapted to video games is theatre, which is I suppose in some ways makes sense, and in some ways, but it's I mean theatre is kind of one of my other passions, and theatre is very much using video games now. So I don't know if you were at EGX last year, but they had the National Theatre actually had a stand,
oh
which
wow,
was
that's
very
cool.
strange because they'd used video game technology to do set design for one of their Shakespeare productions. And yeah, there's things like VR and stuff is being used very heavily in theatre. So it's kind of happening the other way. But it's I suppose it's difficult to see theatrical adaptations in video game form. There
Yeah,
was
it's
actually
an interesting thing though.
I had a little scout around for this today, and there was actually a video game adaptation of Les Miserables.
Oh
It
no,
was
that's
actually
cool.
a fighting game.
Oh, oh,
It was like Street
okay.
Fighter, and it was called Arm Joe, which is apparently the anglicization of the Japanese name for Les Miserables. Um, yeah, so basically you got to all the characters from Les Miserables were just kind of fighting each other.
Well,
So there you go.
I don't know how
Very
I feel about
interesting.
that. Um,
No, I mean unusual, but
Different,
yeah,
yeah. Because then
yeah,
because as you mentioned, you can kind of go the other way. So you have stuff like Resident Evil, where we had the games, and then now we've got the kind of movies,
yeah,
which I have a kind of a guilty pleasure for the Resident
yeah,
Evil movies. I will admit to that. They're terrible, but I kind of love them for being
yeah.
terrible.
No, I enjoy them,
Um,
and I quite enjoy the way they added in more characters from the games because obviously
yeah.
the main character is not from the games, but
No,
it
which is
started.
good. I think if they'd have
Yeah,
done that kind of exact story, it's a bit like with the Last of Us movie that is apparently coming
sure.
at some point. Um, I would love a Last of Us movie, but I would not want them to do the Ellie and Joel story that we know because we kind of have seen that and it's done so perfectly that I don't think translating it to a movie would work, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I could, I could be wrong. But then you have things like the Angry. I recently was at the cinema. They're doing Angry Birds 2, the movie.
yeah.
I don't really know how
That's,
one did that
I
well. They
I
needed to do a
didn't see
two.
the first one to be
I
honest, but
haven't either. But that was I went to see. I think it was Aladdin. I took my mum to see that, and the trailer popped up for Angry Birds 2, and I was looking at it going, who's your demographic here? Like who's watching this?
yeah, I
Um,
mean obviously the first one did well enough to warrant a
yeah,
sequel.
I
Yeah,
don't know how, but it's interesting just to kind of think about the overlaps between like different kinds of media and stuff. And
sure.
obviously, books is a big thing. They do a lot of kind of video. I mean, I will attest that the majority of video game books are not very good. I'd like to think I'm a very kind of well-read person. I've read a lot of books and continue to do so. And like the Assassin's Creed one that they did for Origins, and they did a Tomb Raider one, and
Mm,
they exist. They exist in the world, and they are very easy light reading. You can kind of get through them. They're just not wonderful,
yeah.
unfortunately.
One of
Um,
the Dragon Age ones are very good. I
I've
don't know
not
if
read
you're
the
into
Dragon
Dragon
Age.
Age at all, but
I
yeah, they're
do
very good.
like
I mean,
Dragon Age.
all of their additional content is good. Actually, the novels, the comics, and they've done an animated
Oh,
kind of mini series and a live action mini series as well, which are actually all really good. So.
I had
check those out.
I enjoy Dragon Age, but I'm not that kind of invested that I
Mm,
knew all that. I know they've just done. I need to pick this up actually. God of War. I think Cory Barlog's like father, I want to say, has written a novel
mm,
based on the game, and I'm quite intrigued to read that because God of War is one of my all-time favorite games.
yeah,
And I actually bought the Neil Gaiman Norse mythology book after finishing God of War just because I was like, I need more of this. I need like to consume more meat. I don't know, finish the game. I've done everything I can. I need just more. So I went
yeah.
out and bought that just to kind of that's not really based on the game. The
Mm.
game is actually to some degree based on that because it's got all the lore and anyway, that's off topic slightly. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't get that many games based on books anymore. I mean, in the
No,
80s, the 80s they were everywhere. You had all these text adventures based on The Hobbit and Hitchhiker's Guide and Eric the Viking and stuff. Um, that was huge. You don't get certainly in the AAA sphere. You don't get many. Probably Dante's Inferno was the last one. Can't think of one
yeah,
since then. And that was only very fairly loosely based on the book, I have to say.
yeah, I don't know if just thinking the books that I read, I don't know if they would necessarily let's say that you've got stuff like the Lord of the Rings games and like Middle Earth and
Yeah, I mean they all tend to be based on the films rather than. I mean, visually
yeah,
they're very
true.
much inspired by the films
And
rather than
kind
the
of the
books.
story.
I mean, it's just the only ones. I mean, there was. I don't know if you ever read Redwall books.
No.
Yeah, it's about a bunch of mice that lived in a
Aw.
abbey. It's cute. Yeah, they run around with swords and stuff. It's great.
Oh, mice with swords is even
Yeah,
better.
yeah. Well, you'll have to read those now. But
I
yeah,
will.
they did a game based on those recently, kind of a adventure game. And Pillars of the Earth, which is a Ken Follett book. It's one of my favorite
Yes.
books of all time. Yeah, they did a kind of a point and click adventure game on that. So I suppose
Yeah.
books kind of lend themselves more to
Certain style of
kind of
games, I think.
interactive versions
Mm.
of the story rather than any like a third person
Yeah, kind
shooter
of
or something.
action and
Yeah.
but yeah. Well, I mean, like you guys, let us know. Are there any kind of book, TV, anime, manga, adaptations? I mean, there's also just briefly mention it. You got stuff like Jump Force, like Dragon Ball, all those kind of things, which they're either hit or miss, but they're a very niche kind of market. I feel like those kind of things as well. But yeah, anything you guys kind of really enjoyed that's kind of based on other kind of media or kind of particularly hated from other kind of media, let us know. In the let's say comments or tweets or wherever you are listening to this, kind of let us know. We like a bit of feedback. It's always good. So moving on to, we're going to do this a bit differently. So normally we would read out the kind of the drop and kind of go through it bit by bit. But I think this week we're just going to talk about what's coming up in the next kind of week or so. When this goes out, majority of the things probably will already be out. But we'll have a little chat kind of today anyway. So the kind of first thing for me is Super Mario Maker 2 is out tomorrow, which looks quite exciting. I don't know if you're a kind of Mario Maker person.
No.
No. Well, there we go
I
then.
don't I don't I don't have the patience to make my own stuff. I will probably get it, and I will probably I'll be really interested to play what other people make of it because all these things like that and Little Big Planet, people
Mhm.
make some absolutely amazing stuff. And yeah, I definitely look forward to seeing what other people do with it. But I'm not a maker.
I am right there with you.
Yeah,
It's always quite funny. My other half loves building and loves doing that kind of stuff in games. So whenever there's a game like Fallout 4, for example, when you've got your town or whatever it's and you build it up, and I hated doing that. So I would just hand him the controller and he would do that stuff for me, and then I go back to killing the things because I just get quite like. I guess frustrated. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so when it doesn't go the way I want it to, I get annoyed at it. But Mario Maker 2, the reviews I believe have just come out today or yesterday, it'll be yesterday when you listen to this. And everyone's really enjoying it. It's one of the ones I'll probably pick up down the line a little bit. I'll maybe kind of hang fire. It's not a day one purchase, but I think it's going to do well, especially with it being summer now. All the kids are going to start being off soon. I think it's going to do particularly well.
yeah,
Um, Kind of in keeping with the Switch, this isn't out, but the Dragon Quest Builders 2 demo goes live, I believe, tomorrow, which I'm quite excited about. Dragon Quest Builders is, again, it's a building one, so my other half would do the building and I would do the kind of killing the stuff. But it's quite a fun little, like, it's like Zelda meets Minecraft, kind of silly, chilled, laid back kind of game. And it's nice every now and again to throw one of those in rather than just, lots of deep and harrowing stories about loss and no, I'm just gonna go like break some things and just stab some dudes. It's fine.
Yeah.
um Now this one I'm not buying because it's not my game at all, but I couldn't not mention Car Mechanic Simulator because that's a
Yeah.
game they're bringing out and people are excited about it, and
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but I know I respect it.
People
So
love
that
those simulator games
I do.
where
I
they
love
can
my like
pretend to
life
do
sim
someone
game.
else's job.
Yeah, and not get paid for it. But that's out. That came out, I think, yesterday. It's been out for a little while. And then, of course, F1 2019. Either the legendary one came out a couple of days ago, or this kind of the normal brackets is out kind of tomorrow or today or the 28th, whenever you're listening to this. Which I think F1 will be big. Again, not my kind of thing, but I know other people are particularly excited. I don't know if there's anything coming up this week that you are looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, Samurai Showdown
Huh?
I believe is out now. Samurai Showdown out?
I
I'm not sure.
yeah, I think it was yesterday. She says not entirely sure.
Yeah, well,
But
that's
that.
obviously a classic return of a classic
Mhm.
series. Always good. There's a couple of VR games that look really interesting out this week. Unfortunately, I don't have VR, but
Oh,
I would like
there
to be
was
playing them.
the Spider-Man, wasn't there? The Far From
Yeah,
Home.
there's the Spider-Man. There's one called Paper Dolls Original, which looks absolutely terrifying.
No, that looks I've seen that. That looks no, thank you. It looks horrible. I feel like we should
Yeah,
get Joe to play it. Joe's got a VR. When you listen to this, Joe, to edit it, there you go. It's one of the other horror games you can play. I'm
yeah.
gonna get a message just going, no.
I think he'll be avoiding that one.
Thank you. But one day, I promise you, podcast listeners, we will get Joe to play a horror game and we will record it and put it on and it'll be wonderful and
Yeah,
the internet will rejoice.
sure. Another VR game is one called Medusa and Her Lover, which I,
Oh.
I keep mentioning how I'm into Greek mythology, and
Mhm.
yeah, this is kind of a Japanese take on Greek mythology. So that would be very interesting to see. Unfortunately, it's on VR again. I think I'm going to have to buy a VR headset
I
at some
think
point,
maybe you
so
are.
I'm not missing out on all these things. It's the only platform I haven't got, so I suppose I have to just take the plunge.
You missed out the I'm just Googling Medusa and I Lover now because I'm curious because that I thought the title makes it sound like something it's not going to be.
Hmm.
And from looking at it, it doesn't look like the kind of game that I had in my head. So that's good. It looks quite cool actually. But yeah, anyway. The VRs, they are worth the money. I really liked mine. I didn't have the time, I guess, to play it, and I'm a very lazy human being, and the idea of kind of getting up to put the VR on my head was just too much effort for
Hmm.
me, and that's who I am
Yeah.
as a person. However, for the accessibility of them and for kind of, I mean, Days of Play sale was on recently, and you could pick one up for about 150 quid, brand new
Yeah.
camera and all the games. I think that that's a really really good like introductory price point. If you've already got a PS4, less than 200
Sure.
pounds for a VR kit is
Yeah.
it's
I
not
mean,
cheap
part of
now.
me is thinking, are they going to bring out a better one next year with the PS5?
Five, yeah,
So I kind of
maybe.
think, particularly if it's wireless, would be
Yeah, the
helpful.
problem
But
with
yeah,
wireless is it gets so expensive. Like as soon as you
yeah,
make it wireless, you're like 500 quid.
yeah,
But I suppose if you'd rather, at least we know. I think the nice thing for me when they announced the PS5 was that they said that they were going to keep supporting the VR. I think that was my big worry, not necessarily for myself, but just in general. Is they've got all these VR titles that they've announced. If the PS5 came out and they kind of just went, that's it, done, it'd be a shame. But it's good that they're going to kind of continue with that support.
sure.
But yeah, so just the VR games for you next, well, not for you, but like that look cool.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a few other things out, but none of them particularly grab me. I don't think.
Yeah, we're just kind of we've got every now and again you'll get like stuff like CTR comes out or Super Mario Maker. Like we'll get the kind of few big
Yeah,
ones. We're gearing up. We've got a couple of months and then we'll be in, guys. And then us
yeah,
poor reviewers will be very tired all
yes.
the time.
We'll be doing 3 hour long podcasts. So we
Oh
go
God,
through
yeah.
all the games.
Enjoy. So we'll just kind of touch on what we played this week, so I can finally talk about it now. I did Sinking City this week, which I enjoyed overall. Did enjoy it. I felt the endings were not as kind of. It was slightly anticlimactic. All there was three of them. They all of them just felt a little bit kind of is that it? I don't want to spoil them by saying much more than that. But other than that, it was good. There's a lot of toing and froing, a lot of running around, but there's a really cool feature. So most games now, you do a quest and it goes here, big red arrow or yellow dot or exclamation mark or some kind of notification of you go here, do the thing, cool. With Thinking City, even on the kind of newcomer mode, which I played it on because I'm not the best at detective games, so I kind of wanted to ease myself into it. I played the combat on normal, but the detective bit kind of newcomer. But even so, you get scraps of paper or bits of information that will give you kind of a location. So it'll say it's in northern kind of shells, but it's on the corner of this street and this street, and you have to go on your map and you have to find it and you have to put like a little pin down yourself. And I really liked that. It was nicer than it reminded me of like old school World of Warcraft where you would get a location, you have to go find it rather than just it's here. It kind of added that level of like kind of discovery and finding stuff, and I quite enjoyed that. But no, if you it's obviously based on the Lovecraft kind of novels, so if you like that kind of Call of Cthulhu esque world, the kind of creepy underwater nautically kind of stuff. The water, there's a lot of like boat travel. You kind of, because the city is sunken underwater, obviously. Gave it away by the title. There's a lot of boat travel, and there are if you if you go in the water, and this I hate this, the eels will start to like swarm around you and like pull you. It's horrible. I hate it. Just stay out of the water is my only tip for that game if you're playing it.
Is it
And on the
scary?
it's creepy. It wasn't. So I'm a bit of a wimp, I will admit. I love my horror games, but I will play them like behind a pillow and my other half. Like Resident Evil 2, I couldn't do like I did do them, but the bit with Mr. X when he's like the footstep bit, oh, I was like losing my mind with fear over that. But in the Thinking City, there's times when there's underwater sequences you do where you see off in the distance you'll see giant kind of tentacly monster. It's not Cthulhu, but like
Mm,
tentacly monster things. And I was like, no, I don't like that. Nope, nope, not a fan. But it wasn't horror in like a sense of something following you or there's times when you're near the wild beast, I think they're called, like they've got a weird, it's spelt weird. When you're near the kind of creatures, your sanity level goes down because you've got a sanity bar and a health bar, and things will flash on the screen which is quite egregious. You'll see like yourself like hung by the neck, or you'll see some kind of creature, or you'll see someone that you've killed kind of coming at you with a knife, and they kind of like superimpose it on the screen, so it's like a little picture, and then a big picture will show up, and it's um I wouldn't. It's not scary. It's definitely creepy and it's very atmospheric. The only thing for me was that at times the loading was so just excessive that
mm.
the immersion was almost destroyed. Or I'd go to open my map, which you press well, depending on the button you've got, but the kind of touchpad on the PS4, and it would literally maybe be like 15 seconds till my map would load, and I'm like, oh, I just it's I think for me, the majority of my issues with that game were purely just the running of it and the way that it ran. I feel like it has had a patch since because I completed it a few days ago. So it's possible that the day one patch and the patches that they've done since have improved on that. So hopefully day one they just improved the loading times a little bit. But it was a good game that I've just talked about for like 10 minutes. I do apologise.
Absolutely fine.
But on the flip side of that, I've been playing Crash Team Racing, which is obviously very light-hearted, very silly. We will be doing a review for this when I finish it at some point, so look out for that if you are interested. But it's fun. If you enjoyed the original, you will enjoy this one. It is hard as nails, as always. You have to get those drifts. If you can't get the boost drifts, you will probably come last in most races. You can't just play it like a normal racing game. That's my number one tip for anyone out there. Just practice the drift boosts and you'll be fine. But that's really good. I have played it on my own primarily because I get mad at other people when I play games with them. My other half played me like once and he beat me, and then that was it, and not again. So, but yeah, CTR is quite good. But that's been my week. Has been kind of Sinking City. I finished that, and then I've done a little bit of Crash, which I'm trying to play a bit more of. But time, finding the
Yeah,
time. But how about
yeah.
you?
So I've got two games on Switch to review at the moment. One of which I can't talk about till next week, unfortunately. Uh,
Secret.
yes, indeed. The other one I'm reviewing, I can talk about, even though it doesn't come out till well, tomorrow for us, possibly today, depending on when it's released. Friday, anyway. Friday it comes out, which is another site, which we briefly talked about in the drop last week. I think it's the adventure of a small blind girl and her cat. Or,
Oh,
well,
I liked the
a
look of
cat that she
that.
meets. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It came out on Steam last year, so it's
Okay.
which is probably why it's not embargoed, because everyone can already see
Yeah.
what it's like, and it plays very well on the Switch. It is absolutely beautiful. It is
Oh,
stunningly beautiful game, and it's I mean the scenery is absolutely amazing. The kind of the art style is I really like. It's kind of an alternate reality London, but it moves very quickly into kind of more fantastical worlds. It's been described as steampunk. I don't
okay.
find it particularly steampunk, I have to say. That I think there's a lot more electricity than steam in it, personally. But there you go. I don't think there is. I don't know if there is an electricity
I
punk.
think the term steampunk gets used a lot nowadays for
Yeah,
things that aren't necessarily steampunk. I think
yeah,
it's become a bit of an umbrella term for anything that kind of looks a certain way, as
mm,
opposed to the kind of era and the setting of it, unfortunately.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's. I wouldn't say it was steampunk personally, but yeah. So yeah, it looks stunning. The soundtrack is amazing. Sadly, the gameplay, without spoiling my review, which is coming up soon, too much. The
like a
gameplay,
little teaser for you.
yes, is a little lacking. It's kind of a puzzle platformer, but the platforming is terrible.
Oh
It's
no.
some of the worst platforming I've seen in many years. The collision detection, jumping on ledges is all over the place. It's intensely frustrating, particularly when you're controlling the cat and you're trying to jump up things and you fall to the bottom and you have to do it all again, and then he misses another jump, or sometimes the jump button just doesn't work. He just doesn't jump at all. So yeah, from that point of view, it's a real shame, because I mean it's an Italian studio, which is I don't think I've ever played a game from an Italian studio before. Um, so I was really interested to see kind of the sort of thing they came up with, and as I say, it looks beautiful, it sounds fantastic, but the platforming is just really really frustrating.
Oh no, I hate that in because
Yeah,
that would probably make me, unless it was a review, if it was a game I was playing for pleasure, I probably would just go, I'm not playing anymore. I did that recently with the Crash, just the Insane trilogy. I just went, you know what? I've completed these normally, but the platforming on the new ones just feels that frustrating that I just
yeah.
gave up. But that probably is more me than the game. But yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, no, it's a real shame. I do. I mean, I think they may have been better served by just not having the platforming in it, because there's enough like atmosphere and visuals in there to make it interesting. And I think maybe if it was more of like a exploration puzzle thing rather than a platforming puzzle thing,
Yeah.
that would have been fine. But yeah, it's a shame. Um,
Yeah, a lot of puzzle
yeah,
games, I think they add in the platforming just as a kind of extra tool to kind of give them something, and it doesn't always need it. I found that with a few puzzle games that I've played
yeah,
where I'm like, I don't like this is just superfluous. I don't need this.
yeah.
Just let me do the puzzle. The puzzles are what I'm here for. But well, you can read that soon. When's the review for it going? Do we know? Review
Possibly,
when it's done.
possibly Friday, but if not, definitely Saturday.
Okay, we'll check that out.
Yeah,
Cool. So we will wrap up there then. As always, please do like, kind of follow, retweet, reblog, where whatever platform you're listening on. The thing that you do to make us know you're enjoying it, do that, please. Leave any comments if there's anything you want us to talk about, a topic. Obviously, we're coming ever so close to the 100th episode, so it'd be nice to do something special for that. If you've got any ideas, we have a couple of ideas, but if your ideas are better, we might do that instead, and you'll get a shout out. But yeah, so we will see you all next time. Bye.
bye.